Og, king of Bashan, is the giant who survived the flood, and the strangest thing about him is a piece of furniture. Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11. The book has been describing a war, 2 kings dead, an army moving up the far side of the Jordan, territory being carved up between tribes. And then the writer stops and does something no war narrative ever does. He tells you about a bed. Only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the Rephaim. His bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Is it not in Rabbah of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length of it, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, after the cubit of a man. It is one verse, in a book almost everybody already owns, and I want you to see it sitting there yourself. Dimensions, a material, and the name of the city where the thing is kept. Not the war, not the 2 kings, not the 60 walled cities, furniture measured, with an address attached. By the end of this you will know exactly why that sentence is there, and it is the most modern-sounding thing in the entire chapter. Whether you believe there were ever giants in Bashan is not the question this episode needs you to answer. The verse is in your Bible either way, and the region is on a map you can pull up right now. Start with the road, because Og does not arrive alone. He is the second of 2. Numbers, chapter 21. Israel is moving up the eastern side of the Jordan, and they send to Sihon, king of the Amorites, asking to walk the king's highway through his country. They promise not to touch a field or a well. Sihon says no, and does not merely say no. He gathers everything he has and comes out to meet them at a place called Jahaz. He loses everything, and Israel takes his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok. Then, in the same chapter, they turn north on the road to Bashan, and Og comes out against them at Edrei with all his people. The detail worth catching is what happens before that battle rather than during it. The text records that God tells Moses not to be afraid of him. Sihon gets no such line. 2 kings, 1 campaign, 1 road, and only one of them comes with a reassurance attached. Whatever Og was, somebody thought Moses would need telling. Deuteronomy goes back over the same campaign and adds the inventory. 60 cities in the region of Argob, the kingdom of Og, in Bashan, and it specifies what kind of cities, fenced with high walls, gates and bars, besides a great many unwalled towns. 60 fortified sites in one kingdom is a serious note, and the writer wants you to register that this was not a village chief with a legend attached. And Bashan itself was not a nowhere. It is the best pasture country in the region, and the Bible uses the name as a byword for size, the way we would use a brand. The Psalms have the strong bulls of Bashan closing in on a man. Isaiah pairs the oaks of Bashan with the cedars of Lebanon when he wants 2 things too big to be humbled. Say the word to an ancient Israelite, and he hears fat cattle, huge trees, high ground. So the last giant king ruled the one region whose name already meant enormous. That is either a very good coincidence or the reason the stories stuck to it. And they did stick. Centuries after the conquest, Israel was still singing about this. Psalm 135 and Psalm 136 both run through the nation's history, and both stop to name the same 2 kings, Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan. Not the Pharaoh who chased them, not the walls of Jericho. These 2, by name, in the hymn book, generation after generation. Something about that pair stayed load-bearing for a very long time, and Og's death picked up a story of its own, told centuries afterwards in the Talmud, which I am putting here rather than at the end, because it tells you how big this figure got. In that telling, Og works out how wide the Israelite camp is, walks off, tears the top off a mountain to drop on the whole nation at once, and lifts it over his head. And then, while he is standing there holding it, ants bore a hole through the rock. The mountain slides down around his neck like a collar. His teeth grow outward and lock him into it, so he can neither lift it off nor get out from under it, and Moses kills him where he stands. That is not history, and the rabbis telling it knew it was not. It is a comic tale, and the joke is deliberate. The last giant on earth, beaten by insects and his own teeth. What it tells you is that by the time it was written, the tradition around this king had grown enormous, and the people carrying it were comfortable enough with it to play. Back to the war. The campaign ends. The land east of the Jordan is divided up between 2.5 tribes, and it is right there, with the paperwork done, that the writer puts the bed. Take the measurements seriously for a minute, because they are the reason anyone remembers this verse. 9 cubits by 4. A cubit is the forearm, elbow to fingertip, and the standard figure used for the biblical cubit is around 18 inches. That gives a bed 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide. 13.5 feet. For scale, that is 2 king-size beds laid end to end, in a single frame, 6 feet across. Now the honest part, and this is where a lot of channels will not follow. The verse hedges itself. Translations render the last phrase as after the cubit of a man, and nobody is completely certain what it is doing there. It may be separating an ordinary cubit from a longer royal one. It may be the writer noting that he is using standard measure, and a bed is not a body. Furniture in the ancient world was routinely built longer than whoever slept in it, and a king's furniture more so. So the verse never says, Og stood 13 feet. It says, his bed did. That distinction is where careful readers and excited readers part company, and this channel stands with the careful ones. There is a second reading you should have, and it is not a debunk. The Hebrew word behind bedstead does not only mean the thing you sleep on. It covers a couch, a frame, a bier, the surface a body is laid out on, and that last sense is the doorway. A number of scholars take Og's iron bedstead to be his tomb, a burial bier of black basalt, which is dark, dense, heavy volcanic rock that genuinely does read as iron to the eye. And Og's own territory is covered in it. That plateau east of the Sea of Galilee also holds thousands of ancient megalithic tombs built from enormous unworked slabs, some with roof stones big enough to dwarf a person standing underneath. So the material fits his kingdom, even though the object itself is described as sitting somewhere else entirely, down in Ammon, which is its own small puzzle, and the verse does not explain it. A trophy hauled south, an object of the same regional type, or a bed that was simply a bed. The text does not say. Now the word, because the verse does not call Og a giant. It calls him something more specific and much stranger. The remnant of the Rephaim. Rephaim is a proper name for a people in these passages, a tall clan associated with the land east of the Jordan, mentioned alongside other named groups the text says were there before Israel. But the same word does something else elsewhere in the Bible, and this is where it stops being an ethnic label. In Isaiah chapter 14, when the king of Babylon comes down to the underworld, the text says the Rephaim are stirred up to meet him at his coming. Job says the Rephaim tremble beneath the waters. The Psalms ask whether the dead rise, whether the Rephaim rise to praise. In those passages, the word is not naming a tribe of tall men. It is naming the shades of the dead. One word, two jobs, a clan of giants in the conquest narratives and the population of the underworld in the poetry. Scholars disagree about which sense came first and whether the two are related at all, and that argument is not settled. What is not in dispute is that a reader of ancient Hebrew, meeting the phrase remnant of the Rephaim, is hearing a word that carries the dead inside it. And the geography makes that stranger rather than tidier, which is where this episode turns. Look at where Og's kingdom actually is. Bashan is the high country east and northeast of the Sea of Galilee. His two royal cities are named in the text, Ashtaroth and Edrei. The northern boundary of the territory taken in that campaign is given explicitly, and Deuteronomy names it as Mount Hermon. Hermon, 9,000 feet, snow on it most of the year, visible from most of northern Israel, and in the Enochic literature it is the most loaded piece of ground there is. Because in 1 Enoch chapter 6, when the 200 watchers decide to come down and take wives among the daughters of men, the text names the ground they landed on, the top of that mountain, and it explains the name while it is there. The place is called Hermon, it says, because that is where they swore to each other and bound themselves to the plan with a curse. So the mountain where the fallen angels swore their oath is the northern border of the kingdom of the last of the Rephaim. I want to be careful here, because this is exactly the point where this genre normally starts making things up. The Bible does not say Og was descended from the watchers. Deuteronomy never mentions Enoch, and Enoch never mentions Og. Anyone who tells you the text draws that line is adding it. What is genuinely there is this. The conquest narratives place a giant clan in a specific region. That region's northern landmark is the mountain the Enochic tradition names as the landing site. And the two royal cities of that region, Ashtaroth and Edrei, are not only biblical names, they also appear in texts recovered from the ancient coastal city of Ugarit, where a group called the Rabbah, the same consonants as Rephaim, is associated with those very places and with the world of the dead. 3 bodies of text, written in different languages and different centuries, one small piece of ground, and the same cluster of ideas keeps attaching itself to it. Giants, the dead, and the place where something came down. That is a pattern worth noticing. It is not, on its own, a chain of causation, and I am not going to sell it to you as one. If you want more of the last giant kings, the mountain that keeps turning up behind them, and the verses nobody stops to explain, make sure to subscribe to Vault of the Fallen. On to the flood, because there is a problem in the arithmetic that somebody noticed a very long time ago. Here is the problem, and it is the reason Og has a second life in Jewish tradition. Genesis says the flood killed everything on dry land that had the breath of life in it, apart from what was in the ark. Genesis 6 says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, before the flood, and then Numbers 13 has the scouts coming back from Canaan reporting that they saw the Nephilim there, and calling the giants they met the sons of Anak, who come of the Nephilim. And the text closes that loop itself, which is the part people miss. Follow it slowly, one step at a time. The scouts see giants and call them sons of Anak. Numbers says the sons of Anak come from the Nephilim. Deuteronomy chapter 2 then says the Anakim were counted as Rephaim. And Deuteronomy chapter 3 says Og is the last of the Rephaim. 4 sentences, 4 different books worth of vocabulary, and they hand off to each other in a line that ends on one man. Then that same chapter does something I find genuinely odd every time I read it. It goes around the neighbors and collects their words for the same thing. The Moabites, it says, used to call the people who lived in their land before them the Emim, great and many and tall as the Anakim. The Ammonites called theirs the Zamzumim, and the phrase comes round again, great and many and tall. And each time the text stops to add that these too were counted Rephaim. That is not a poet reaching for an image. That reads like a records office. Somebody sat down with the giant names of 4 neighboring nations, filed all of them under one heading, and then noted which of them still had a king on the throne. Something is supposed to be gone, and it is not gone. The rabbis noticed, and rather than smoothing it over, they produced an answer, and then 2 more, and Og is at the center of all 3. The first is the plainest. In the Talmud, in a discussion about the flood, one tradition holds that Og survived it by getting onto the ark from the outside. He was too big to go in, so he rode on the roof, or clung to a beam of it, and came through the year on the water, attached to the vessel that was supposed to end his kind. The second is more detailed and much stranger, and it comes from a later Midrashic collection. Og sits on a rung of the ladder of the ark, outside, in the rain, and makes an oath to Noah that he and his descendants will be Noah's slaves forever. Noah accepts, cuts an opening in the side of the ark, and feeds him through the hole every day for the length of the flood. Read that back. In that tradition, the giant king Israel meets at Edrei is only alive because Noah fed him through a hole in the wall, and he swore an oath to earn it. The third is not another escape route. It is what the tradition does with him once he has escaped, and it is the one that shows what the rabbis were actually up to. In Genesis 14, Abraham learns that his nephew Lot has been taken captive because someone the text calls simply the fugitive, the one who escaped, comes and tells him. Nobody is named. Jewish tradition fills that blank with Og, which turns him into a walking piece of the old world, still moving around in the age of the patriarchs, carrying messages between eras he should not both be in. Stack them, and the shape is obvious. These are not fairy tales told for fun. 2 of them are mechanisms, and the third is a consequence, and all 3 exist to answer one real problem in the text. The giants are supposed to have died in the flood, and the conquest narratives keep running into them. Og became the answer because Deuteronomy called him a remnant. A remnant is what is left of something after the rest is gone, and that word invites exactly the question the tradition then spent centuries answering. Which brings us back to the verse, and to the question this whole episode has been walking toward. One more act, and it is the answer. Tell me in the comments which reading of that iron bedstead you land on, furniture or a black stone tomb, and whether the difference changes anything for you. And the mountain at the top of Og's kingdom has a full documentary of its own in this vault, covering the 200 who came down onto it and what they fathered. So why is a bed in the Bible? Look at the sentence structure one more time, because everything is in it. Is it not in Rabbah of the children of Ammon? That is a question with an expected answer, and the expected answer is yes. The writer is not describing an object out of reach. He is naming one in a city his readers have heard of, in the kingdom next door, and inviting them to agree that it is there. Read it that way, and the verse is a citation, not proof. And I am not claiming to know what was in the writer's head. But look at what he actually does. He makes a claim. He names a physical object. He puts it in a specific city, and he gives you the numbers, so you can hold them against the thing. Whether it was a bed or a black stone tomb, whether the man in it stood 13 feet or 6'6", that does not change. It is the behavior of somebody who expects to be checked. That is why the verse is there, not for color. It is somebody saying, "Go and look, 3,000 years ago," and it survived because he wrote down the address. The verse is still in Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11, and you can open it tonight. Rabbah is still there, under the modern city of Ammon. The black stone is still all over that plateau, and the great slab tombs are still standing on it. Hermon still has snow on it, and it is still the northern edge of what was Og's kingdom. The word for his people still means both the giants and the dead. And the sentence still ends with a question, asked by a writer who assumed you would go and look.